Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I am here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, yet again, there has been somewhat of a gap between us speaking, but Aston Villa are still arguably one of the best teams in England at the moment, mate, aren't they? It felt, Aston Villa won, Wolves nil. This was a massive win because this was the sort of banana skin, right? In this massive run up of games. And obviously, we've had the European game at home just before this as well, days before. And, you know, the tone couldn't be more different, could it, than from the start of the season? It feels like we're in full flow. It feels like we're over those little teething issues, should we say, that we had at the start of the season with the sort of lack of transfers and all of this kind of stuff, the behind the scenes. Now we're kind of, we're going about our business and we're absolutely flying.
We've come a long way, mate. We've come a long way. It's been a pretty incredible, what is it now? 11 games that we've won, only lost two in all competitions since that draw against 10-man Sunderland. I think that was probably, when we really hit, I don't say crisis point as the club, but I mean, under the Emery era, that's probably about as close as we've come, right? I remember the podcast that we did post that game, particularly centered around Emery's comments when, he was calling the players lazy and like singling out Harvey Elliott and stuff like that. And kind of remember saying on the pod that, some managers don't ever turn that around. Once you kind of go public with your criticism of players and particularly start singling ones out, particularly new signings, unless a manager that is you've crossed the Rubicon there. That really is the point of no return. But I think it is truly a credit to Unai that he has turned this around, that the positive feeling is back within the club, that we're playing with confidence. And look, I don't think that it was a game for the ages or a particularly good Villa performance, to be honest with you. I think if you're Wolves, you're probably walking out of that game wondering how on earth you didn't come away with something. But there is something in that. There is something in that. Being able to win, keep a clean sheet in that kind of game against, what is a seriously improved Wolves side, you've got to take that. You've got to take that. It is one hell of a turnaround. And I think, the gaffer deserves all the credit.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And it's there's been a bit of a theme in all of these games, and it's been like outside of the box goals, mate. And I say this to mention XG. Long-time listeners of the podcast will know how much we appreciate XG, and not in the sort of annoying way where it's just thrown at you and not contextualized. But if you look at the XG table, the Premier League table based upon
Yeah.
XG this season, we actually sit, depending on which tables you look at, because there's some sort of varying stats, but I've got a 16th in the XG table, mate, which is remarkable, really. And it's been a big criticism in terms of, goal scoring, chance creation, all that kind of stuff. And it kind of feels like Emery's kind of just taken the handbrake off and gone, fuck it, lads, just shoot on sight. Just have a go. You never know. You
Yeah.
never know. And even when it's someone like Boubacar Kamara, especially when it's somebody like Boubacar Kamara, letting rip like that, because I think that's probably about his third or fourth goal for Villa. Someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there, but it feels like Boubacar Kamara probably has one or two shots every game, every other game, and they all go almost as high as the top of the North Stand. So for Kamara to score a goal and place it as well as he did right in front of the whole end, that was remarkable, really. And we're just kind of on this. We're having a goal of the season competition with ourselves.
It's great to watch. It's great to watch. Two direct free kicks as well in one season, which is incredible. But this is all, this is what comes when, we haven't really got a striker in form, really.
Yeah.
Obviously, Daniel Marlin puts in a fantastic performance midweek, but I think you can kind of see from the weekend that, he's not really an out and out number nine. He's not really someone that I think we can turn to over the long run to kind of get us through a Premier League season and, score the kind of Ollie Watkins numbers of goals that we're accustomed to getting over the last few seasons, over his, albeit short Villa career. He's still yet to get into double figures for goals, Daniel Marlin. So this kind of purple patch that he's in is, definitely worth noting. But, 6 goals in 27 Premier League appearances, albeit most of them substitutes. means that we've really had to distribute goals throughout the team. And, it's kind of coincided with, Morgan Rogers gets us through the Leeds game, and, Mbwendy has been pitching in, and then all of a sudden you can kind of count on Amadou now and Booba, it seems, to kind of get you a couple of those goals from distance in a season. And it's not a sustainable method of winning football games. Of course it's not, but neither, Ollie Watkins, you kind of hope, I know we're kind of sat in December still waiting for his season to catch fire, but this isn't a stretch that you hope will go on until May. At some point he'll find his goal scoring feet, and he'll get going and the goals will come, and then we can start to be, see our kind of goals come from those usual areas in and around the penalty spot. But in the meantime, I think we've done a really, really good job of distributing goals throughout the team. We've seen Matty Cash pitch in with a few as well, so yeah, that's what you have to do, right? We have to get a little bit creative. You have to see guys pitch in, and I think the guys are doing a really, really good job of that. And above all else, it's bloody good fun. We are, I don't know if there's a Premier League like equivalent of like the Premier League's like NBA League Pass team, but essentially, like, if you're a neutral turning into the kind of pick of Premier League fixtures, I imagine Villa are quite high up the League Pass rankings right now, because we're good to watch. We've got some fun players. You're guaranteed to see some good goals at least, or definitely some good attempts a couple of times a game. Our games are usually pretty close. We're coming out on the winning side of a lot of them at the moment, but yeah, ultimately a pretty entertaining spectacle, to be honest with you. We did, ride our luck at the other end too. We're not just spectacular in front of goal. We've got to credit Emi Martinez for being pretty incredible with some saves at the other end too. He's kind of had a hot and cold season, I think it's fair to say. It was definitely hot at Villa Park at the weekend. And so, yeah, both ends of the pitch, we're requiring some pretty incredible heroics right now. But this is, I suppose, the chat about how sustainable this is can be for another day. Right now, it's another win in the Premier League ahead of, as you say, a really, really difficult run.
I think that's what's important about this, mate, is because it's easy to look at a game and go, "Oh, Ollie didn't score again," and we've kind of spoken about that a couple of times, and yeah, like that situation does sort of feel like it only gets worse the longer he goes without a goal. But it's and I think I'm guilty of this as well this week, mate, because obviously after Marlon's 2 goals against Young Boys, you instantly go, well, Marlon has to start against Wolves, and hindsight will tell you that actually we probably would have done a better job starting Ollie in this game, because they played 3 absolutely huge centre backs, and Marlon doesn't have that kind of presence that Watkins does, and I think it's a characteristic of Watkins that often is overlooked, and quite annoyingly too, because he's actually like pinned some of the best defenders in the league on some of the biggest occasions. Virgil van Dijk's, Gabriel, Saliba. Like, if you look at even games that we've lost against the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal, and even Manchester City, in the time that Ollie Watkins has been at the club, I think it's fair to say more often than not, Ollie has got the better of these guys, whether he scored a goal or not. And he brought that physicality, he brought that presence when he came on. And yes, he didn't get a goal, and we had to rely on that Boubacar Kamara wonder strike to kind of bail us out, if you like. But Ollie's presence was more than sort of justifiable. And I think it's one of them where you kind of have. I think Ollie and Daniel could probably play together at some points, but the only thing that you kind of have to question there is, well, how do you change things then if things aren't happening in the game? You got to look at the sort of the state of play. How can someone like Evan Gesand or Emi Buendia or whoever may be on the bench come on and change things when you've already got your 2 sort of strikers, if you like, on the pitch? So I think ultimately, Emery had clocked that, and that physicality actually helped us get back into the game. And there's this feeling, isn't there, mate, at Villa Park at the moment that we're just not going to lose games. I think that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're 8 games at home. That we're on an 8-game winning streak at home, which is unbelievable. Then
Can I chime in there? There's a stat I actually, I'll throw it immediately back to you. There's a stat I wanted to shout out about our home record, if that's okay. Like,
absolutely,
that I can't believe I've not seen this anywhere. And I was reading a Jacob Tanswell piece today, actually, in The Athletic, about like the kind of amazing comeback we've seen over the season. No team in Europe has won more matches at home over the past 3 years in all competitions than Emery's 37 in the Premier League at Villa Park.
Wow,
that's mental.
See, I was going to throw out a slightly different stat, but I think that just makes they both complement each other really well. This one courtesy of AVC Stato. We've only lost one of our last 31 home games. That includes 2 wins against Manchester City, a win against Paris Saint-Germain, a win against Bayern Munich. Sorry, not Bayern Munich, against Juventus. Like, there's some crazy games in here. And yeah, like, we're fully going under the radar. But like, again, you tune into any podcast that we've done since Emery's come through the door, mate. We're more than happy for it to go on like that, aren't we? We're more than happy to kind of trickle under the radar, especially when you look at, because it was so doom and gloom at the
Yeah.
start of the season, wasn't it? And rightfully so. And I think we kind of contributed to that in some ways, and would always be a sort of glass half full rather than half empty podcast. But there were some pretty alarming signs, and it's okay when nobody's taking note, but you've got all the sort of content creators, pundits, everybody was just piling in on Villa after 5 games. Look at where we are now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I still think for a lot of neutrals, it's like crept up on people.
Yeah.
I think, the kind of, you realize that when you're quite detached from, everyone's so focused on their own club, that I think for like a lot of neutrals, it's certainly the kind of chat around the office and stuff like that. It's like, how are you guys fourth? And it's like, it has been pretty incredible, really. And it was a lot of news. And I always think it kind of, there's so much noise when Villa are very good compared to like Newcastle. I mean, Newcastle, like, obviously a good result of the weekend, but they were, I mean, they're 13th now. I think they were kind of around 16th, 15th, or 14th, 15th, maybe, somewhere in that kind of region before their win. And so you kind of realize that, Newcastle, Eddie Howe, a very good manager, has really struggled with the balance of European and Premier League football over the kind of 2 seasons they've had now in the Champions League. And obviously, I know we're competing in, they kind of step down in terms of European competition, but Unai, you really do realize just how good he is at juggling those 2 competitions. It's something that, we've played in all 3 tiers of European competition now, and never really has our Premier League form faltered as a result of European competition. It's pretty incredible how we're able to juggle that. Since that kind of that slip up at Sunderland, I think we sit top of the league if you tot up all points since then. So the kind of turnaround has been incredible. It was a pretty seismic win for Unai as well. So he now has more Premier League wins as Aston Villa manager than any other Villa manager in history, or has tied that record, sorry. So he's now level with John Gregory and Martin O'Neill, who have pretty incredibly 61 wins each after 148 and 152 games, respectively. So pretty incredible that those 2 tenures matched up almost identically. But yeah, our home form has been incredible. You kind of go to Villa Park now with almost full confidence. There's not really anybody that can rock up at our place on any given day, and you're not giving us at least a fighting chance of coming out with a result. So yeah, pretty incredible what we're doing. Unai continues to evolve, to change this team. Every year it feels like the team's got a slightly different identity, that there's something different that we're doing. You kind of go back to, this team and the way it plays feels a real far cry from, remember, the kind of early Unai high line that everyone was, we kind of had that incredible stats that we had like the most effective high line in Europe and stuff like that. And that was kind of Villa's calling cards at the time. And now you kind of fast forward to this modern version of Villa, one that's like incredibly defensively sound as well. I think it's important to say, I think we've conceded half the goals, 11 at this point of the season, than we had last season, which was 22. So defensively, we've really turned around. As you say, we're now a much more kind of potent threat from outside the box as well. So this Villa team continues to take on new shapes and evolve, and Unai has never stood still. It's really, really interesting how in the Premier League, how, a manager comes in and they're able to work, look at today's opponents, Vitor Pereira was, walking on water the back end of last season, and, couldn't buy a win. They still can't buy a win, and we're now sat in December. It's pretty incredible how quickly this league figures you out. And so you have to stay on your toes. You'll have to adapt. You have to bring new things. You have to like develop new identities, and keep opposition teams guessing. And Unai keeps doing that to like incredible effects. For all the times that we've evolved and gone through experiments, the start to the season is as bad as it's gotten, and to say that and be sat in with a very good chance of being in and around the top 4 at Christmas, pretty incredible consistency.
It is, mate. It is. And I think an extra little sprinkle to go on your Emery stats there, he's got the most home Premier League wins as well. So he's just overtaken John Gregory with 37 wins in 58 games. John Gregory has 36 wins in 75 games. So I guess like it like we obviously are talking about the greatest manager certainly in our lifetime, Dan. I know that will age some of our listeners, and these kind of comments have them before, but like it really does put into perspective just how brilliant that we're doing, and it's just a shame that there isn't a trophy to sort of go along with that. But hopefully, there's one at the end of the season. Who knows, mate? Who knows? But that Premier League table is looking pretty. It's starting to take shape, isn't it, mate? It is starting to take shape. I think the outliers there are still, you're looking at your Brighton, maybe Sunderland, Brentford as well, still hanging on in there in the top 10. But we currently sit fourth at the time of recording, obviously before the Brighton game. And a win here could take you up to second in the league if results go your way. Heck, could we even go? We could even go top of the league if we go and beat Arsenal on the Saturday as well. Again, results would have to go massively in your way, but like that is an unbelievable position that we're in yet again. And um, just to sort of again repeat myself, and because I am a bit of a broken record, but like I'm so calm with this being like our like dirty little secret, Aston Villa's form and all of this. Like I don't need the national press. We'll talk about it to you guys. We can, we've got this community. We don't need this. Doesn't need to go anywhere else because we've got a pretty crazy run of fixtures coming up, mate, haven't we? If you look at December, it's virtually a game every 3 days up until January. So it's Brighton next, and it's Arsenal at home, Basel away, West Ham away, Manchester United at home, Chelsea away, Arsenal away, Forest at home, Palace away. So you are basically 3 games a week up until that point, barring the week gap between the West Ham and Man United game.
Yeah.
And the only thing that does worry me somewhat, and it won't be national news because he's not Jadon Sancho, but a sub got subbed. Ross Barkley obviously got injured, didn't he? This is the time of year where we just can't afford for that to happen. And Barkley's proven how useful he can be in these short cameos. He pops up with goals here and there. Whilst he does sort of look like he's got cement in his boots most of the time, I think his positioning more often than not, puts him in pretty good stead. And I look at it, and obviously, like Ross came on, and then Lamar came on for Ross, and we spoke about this before. Like, that is no longer like a point of contention. Somebody like Lamar coming on because that he can do a job. He's more than capable, and if there are definitely cases for him to even be starting games. But when you look at somebody like Amadou, obviously, I think since the last time we spoke, mate, went away, had a little knock in the international break, has obviously come back, played against young boys, got a couple of minutes here as well. It's just like load management has never been more important than it has now because obviously we didn't really speak about the young boys game, mate, but that has left us in a pretty good spot. We're currently third in the Europa League table, but with how sort of competitive that league is and some of the fixtures that you've got going, it is really important that you sort of sew up that top 8 position so as we can avoid that extra game in what will be a pretty hectic end of January, start of February.
Yeah, and that's why, outside of this really, really tough run of games, and, obviously away to Brighton is a very tough game. That's 4th against 5th right now in the Premier League. And then there probably is no greater acid test in all of Europe right now than facing Arsenal. But at home in a 12:30, I mean, given everything that we've just said about our home record, you can get right up for that. Arsenal twice in a month. So we face them on the 6th and then again on the 30th with...
That's mad, isn't it? Has that ever happened? I mean, surely it has, but that's mad.
I was looking at United's running games with a couple of lads in the office, and they have Wolves twice in a month as well. So it's not just us that are kind of doing this like crazy turnaround. And so, yeah, really, really tough run of games, as you rightly say, mate. We've also got kind of, obviously, I know we're skipping ahead almost 2 months here, but there's a week in January where we go away to Fenerbahce on the 22nd, then away to Newcastle on the 25th. And that is like a grueling away shift, really. I mean, yeah, you kind of really want to have, being in this, obviously, you want to prioritize the Premier League games given the quality of opposition that we're facing. Okay, the away game at West Ham might offer some solace, and you kind of have to make sure that the games against Forest and Everton at home that kind of come in January, you pick up points there. But we know that it doesn't really matter how or where United are. Villa United, always tricky. We've played some pretty terrible versions of Man United over the last few years, and we've come out on the losing side. So, yeah, all of them really, really difficult games. You never really know what you're going to get from United and Chelsea, but yeah, you got to take it game by game. I feel like it's really, really easy to look at that December and think, oh my God, Arsenal twice in a month, away to Basel, United, Chelsea, all these games. But the first one is Brighton tomorrow, which is a really, really hard game. Like in isolation, that is a really, really tough game. And they're capable. I feel like we've done all right down there. I feel like we've had some good results there in recent years. But yeah, that is definitely a tough game. They're on a pretty decent run themselves. Just checking now for the last time they lost the game. The 25th of October, the last time. So they've gone, off the back of a month without a defeat in the league at least. So yeah, will be a tricky one. We need to be our very best to get a result there. That's going to leave us a little leggy going into the Arsenal game, which isn't ideal, but I didn't think they looked particularly fresh against Chelsea. But they've got the far easier game. They're at home. Well, still tricky, but they're at home to Brentford. You imagine they'll kind of potentially rotate a little for that one. Yeah, it's going to be a really, really interesting run, to be honest with you, mate. And I think we'll find out exactly where this Villa are at. But if Ollie was going to make a return to goal scoring form, the next month or so would be a good time to do it.
Surely it's got to be on Saturday against Arsenal. Surely he's bagging in that game.
Yeah, he loves a goal against Arsenal. Although these are the games, particularly either if it's on the road down in London, it's those big games where he's so often showed up for us. He's got goals at Stamford Bridge and stuff like that. So, yeah, absolutely. But I think we're also feeling the weight of, the kind of the lack of Harvey Elliott, who you imagine, we've seen is good value for a goal. Despite his lack of appearances, already scored for us this season. You could really do with someone like Evan Gesson finding his feet and popping up with a couple here and there. So yeah, I think if it isn't Ollie, some guys are gonna have to keep standing up.
I feel like we've got to chill on Evan Gesson, man. So like, people are losing their mind over this guy, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. My thought, I don't know what you think, mate, but when we kind of did our video about Gesson and we did our research and all that kind of stuff, what I had taken away from the clips and all of that I'd seen is that he felt like a penalty box striker. He felt like somebody who could do a job roughing up centre backs, play with his back to goal, link up play nicely, and score and get on the end of chances within the penalty box. Unai Emery obviously sees Evan Gesson's game very differently to me because he's been playing him right winger essentially. And I think, there is a bit of Bertie Traore about him, which I think is why there's a lot of fanfare because, I say fanfare, I mean, that's a very loose term, but why there's certainly a lot of conversations about him because.
Shout out to Bertie, by the way.
Oh, what a goal that was, by the way. And that was vintage, but and that little, the celebrate. I love it.
Shout out.
No one can ever make me hate Bertrand Traore. I think this is why I feel this way about Evan Gesson because I think he's fundamentally not playing in the right position. Who am I to tell that to Unai Emery? Of course, but I just feel like we would see a bit more from him if he was playing a little bit more centrally. And we kind of felt with the Eagles game, right, that you were hoping at least he gets his goal, that'll that'll really kick him off. But I know we say that like it doesn't matter how it goes in, but it was just the jankiest goal ever. And I think he needs to score like a nice, just a nice little placement in the corners. And I think we'll see start to see a better Evan Gesson than we've seen. I can understand some of the frustrations, but I think ultimately it's kind of like be careful what you wish for because all of the people moaning about Evan Gesson are the exact same people that are moaning about Leon Bailey. Again, very well publicised how we feel about Leon, mate. We are fans of Leon Bailey, although we were not blind to the sort of downturn in form, maybe the last 6 to 8 months of his time at Villa. However, Bailey costs you 35 million quid And I think it's fair to say, mate, certainly in that position on the wing, Bailey's twice the player that Evan Gesand is, even on a bad day. On a good day for Evan Gesand, which I think, again, it is fair to say we haven't seen that. But like, we've signed this guy for 30 million quid almost 4 years later. So that 30 million quid, 35 million quid that Leon Bailey signed for 4 years ago isn't 35 million quid in today's money, right?
Yeah.
So, we've kind of the kind of the fee, the player you've got, the profile, it's not the right fit. And whether he was supposed to fill that Leon Bailey hole, obviously we don't know, but that is the position that he is sort of occupying. And I think, yeah, like as I said, I think you just got to be careful what you wish for, because like people, there's a certain minority of the fan base that were more than happy to drive Leon out of the club, and now we're in this position with somebody who is, again, I'm a big fan of Evan. I think there's potential there, but he's not as good.
No. And, I think you really have to put a question mark over all of our summer business, given the kind of Monchi situation that unfolded.
Yeah.
Almost immediately after, right? I think with the kind of Leon price as well, obviously that fee is potentially inflated, given, everyone knew that we just had about 100 million as well. So it's like,
Yeah.
I think that's but yeah, it is a classic case of be careful what you wish for, right? And like, whilst I think that, it's felt like a really expensive gamble at the time for Evan Gesand. It felt like, and that was, we didn't really have 30 million to spend. And so to put it on a, kind of diamond in the rough type player was a pretty big call from us. And I think, you got to kind of, looks like the type that will need an arm around the shoulder and to be told, nah, keep going, you're fine. I think as long as Villa keep winning and other players keep pitching him from goals, he can kind of like keep mucking away in the background and just kind of wait for his moment. But as I say, when we're going to kind of have to rotate so heavily, particularly through the next month when there's European games mixed in with Premier League games, you imagine there's going to be some kind of real minutes opening up. And obviously the one thing that was definitely something worth calling out from the Younger Boys game is that Harvey Elliott was on the bench. So, whether he's kind of creeping back into being...
It's a bigger bench in Europe, though, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, there is that. There is that. But still noteworthy, I think, during this situation. I was wondering if it would just be the Christmas advert that would be this time, the first time I saw him, like, before New Year. Wheeled him out for that one, didn't we?
Liverpool are going to class that as an appearance, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're gonna that's one towards the 10.
Yeah. A hell of an assist from him. And so yeah, no, it's good stuff, mate. But yeah, those are the, I think once you're winning, you can kind of forgive that, the Elliott and Gesson situations. The results are a little different. We start to take a turn. Goals are a little bit scarce, God forbid. Tough conversations need to be had, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually think that they'd recorded Elliott leaving with all of his stuff in that trolley that he was pushing. I think he just cleared his locker out. Do you know? And it kind of brings you on Sancho a bit, doesn't it? Because like he's been getting a bit of a tough ride. And again, I can understand the frustrations. We're playing somebody into form and fitness. He didn't really have much of a pre-season, but it was only the back end of last season he was looking electric for Chelsea. So like I believe obviously there's a player there. It's Jadon Sancho, for goodness sake. But a bit of patience. Hopefully, with all of these games, there's going to be opportunities for these guys. I honestly think that with Elliott, I know we've spoke about this like to death on the podcast, but I think that there's like an appearance or two in this like mad run. I don't think it'll go above the threshold. I think he'll come on if we need to be resting legs, whether it's 10, 15 minutes, whatever. I think we may see Harvey Elliott once or twice in December and sort of bid him farewell. But it's yeah, the summer business does need to be questioned, and like clearly they don't want to spend the money that is we're obligated to if we go and pass that 10-game threshold with Harvey Elliott, right? Because we need to go and sign a striker or somebody else. There's issues that need to be addressed. And then when you look at the Premier League second top goal scorer this season, mate, Igor Thiago, papers are linking us with him every single day. And I'm all over this, mate. I've got to say, I'm all over this.
Brentford have done us pretty well in the past. I think
Scott Hope begs to differ, but yeah, we've done okay. We've done okay.
It's that's a very good point. Did forget about that one. But yeah, no, who knows? I think it will be really, really the Elliot one, continues to baffle me. But as you say, I think we've truly gone round the houses there. Be really, really interesting to kind of see what comes of the next week. Obviously, one thing we'll lose. Guess on you imagine to I don't know. Ivory Coast qualify?
I think Ivory Coast or AFCON, yeah. So that's something to consider as well.
So that is, that's something that we'll kind of throw in there as well. I think he's our only player that will lose to AFCON. So that's kind of something to throw into the mix as well. But no, obviously, I didn't want to round off the podcast, mate, without shouting out Guinea.
Oh, mate, yeah, wow,
beautiful little pre-match stuff. The documentaries over the international break, nice touch. Obviously, compounded with Scotland making the World Cup, which I think as Villa fans we're all happy to see Guinea get over that. Watching them lead Scotland out at a World Cup will be really, really sweet. 300 up as a Villa player, never looked better. Thought the documentaries were a real touch of class too. Thought they were a really, really good watch. The media that the club is putting out is definitely taken a leap. Stuff like that coming out on a semi-regular basis is really nice. So, wanted to shout out the skip.
America's not ready to see John McGinn, mate. That's like,
wow.
I don't know where Scotland are playing their games, but like, can you imagine the poor people of Kansas? Then they just see John McGinn's arse like going into like Lamine Yamal. That's the content I want to see.
Bring it.
That's what.
Well, yeah. The problem is with the World Cup group stage is they'll have like their group will be like Scotland, Papua New Guinea, Azerbaijan, and Singapore. And do you know what I mean? Like I saw like you see that look at the mocks up groups for this World Cup, and like because there's like it goes down to like I'm seeing like Group J. It's like, what business like we got like a Group J at the World Cup?
You're so right. You're so right. Oh man, yeah. It's going to be great for them though. It's going to be. Although my mind's just gone back to a clip that maybe it was a Sky interview that Ollie and McGinn did at some point last season, and it was England Scotland, and they asked them like, "Oh, would you be happy if like if the other nation won?" And Ollie was like, "Yeah, like I'd be like happy for John, like yeah, that'd be great." And John was just like, absolutely not, fuck up, like. and Ollie was really upset about it, and it perfectly like summarizes how English people and Scottish people feel about each other. It was so funny. I love that clip. But we're gonna get a lot more of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, shout out Guinea. Modern day club legend, probably like the first like genuine like landmark bona fide club legend I've probably seen really in my lifetime. I think he really, really sits up there in the annals of Villa greats, considering the journeys he's taken us on. And the way that he's playing, the shape he's in, who's to say there's not 350, 400 in there too?
I hope so, mate. I hope so. It does feel like we're getting to a point though where he's like a one game a week, or like if it's two, it's going to be 60 minutes at a push again. But that's why we have an amazing team of sports scientists and all of that, people that can look at the data and know. But I think there is something to be said about an Aston Villa team that doesn't line up with John McGinn. They don't feel as all in as I don't want to say committed, because I don't think that's fair, but I think that John McGinn is kind of the epitome of that sort of passion and is ironically like the sort of the connection between the fans, right?
Yep.
I think there's a lot of bad things that happened during the Steven Gerrard era, and John McGinn becoming the club captain, although it was kind of still sort of shrouded in some negativity, because it was obviously stripped of Tyrone, who was a wonderful captain in his own right, but something beautiful has come out of that. And it would have been a shame if John McGinn didn't ever become the club captain of Aston Villa, as you say, mate, the journey that we've been on. So
I thought it was nice to see Yuri walks out on Thursday too.
Do you know? Yeah, he like captain vibes. They said there's the 5 captains, don't they? And Emmy's not one of them. Who've we got? It's Concert, McGinn. It's got to be Yuri, and probably Ty.
Yeah,
I think that. Yeah, I mean, like, what a leadership group to have.
Emmy, Martina.
No, I think they took him out of it, didn't they?
Oh yeah,
took him out of it because he's not wore the armbands. It is, if Guinea comes off, it always goes to Esri.
That's right.
Yeah, Wow.
Very good point. Very good point.
I'm kind of. I mean, as great as Emmy's been, I don't really want to talk about him. To be fair.
No, good over the weekend. It's over the weekend. But that's all you're getting out of me.
Yeah, exactly. But no, like what a time to be a Villa fan at the moment. And yeah, we'll be back Wednesday night to discuss
Yeah,
the Brighton game. Hopefully, we're talking about a win, guys. And yeah, if you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. If you're on Apple Music or Spotify, follow, share, download. It all helps us out more than you can know. Up the Villa.